Got a review for you here on the channel today. We're going to be taking a look at the new Easton 3.2mm Parallel Pro. So what I'll do is I'm going to unbox them, show them to you up close, and I'll let you know why I think this is going to be a really successful arrow, and then we're going to build up a dozen of these to get ready to shoot them. So like I said there in the intro, I've got these new Easton X10 Parallel Pro 3.2mm arrows here. I think this is going to be one heck of a popular arrow, and I have a lot of thoughts that I'm going to share with you in this video as to why I think you may actually like this better than the regular X10, depending on the type of archery you shoot, of course. And my plan here is I'm going to build them up on the bench, and I'm going to show you up close all of the little things that I find about this arrow and share with you my honest thoughts. Because I did purchase these arrows with my own money because I planned on reviewing them for the channel, and you're going to find that I'll be truly unbiased and give you my honest feedback about these arrows. You're not going to find this anywhere else because I'm not selling these to make a profit. I'm also not sponsored by Easton or any other company, and so therefore I'm not a talking piece for those companies that I represent, because I want to provide you with honest feedback about archery equipment, especially when you're spending your hard-earned money. And the only way that I do actually make a living from this channel is you watching the videos, but also if you click those links down in the description below. I do have affiliate links down in the description below for all of the things that I'll be using in the video, including these Parallel Pros. And it massively helps this channel out if you click those links before you shop there, even if you're not purchasing this gear and something else maybe you want to grab. And also, I want to let you know that I am giving away a dozen of these Easton X10 Parallel Pro 3.2mm arrows. That's a long thing to say, including tungsten points, because everybody really wants to be shooting these arrows with tungsten points. And if you're interested in entering the giveaway, the way you actually sign up for the giveaway for this dozen arrows and your choice of spine, you even get to choose if you want 120 or 100 grain points in the actual tungsten points, also your choice of nocks. And the way you enter is if you join the Backyard Archery Championships, which is currently available and currently live on my website, jkaminski.com. Essentially all you do is you sign up there, register. It's kind of like a digital mail-in tournament. It's really fun. We actually ran it last year. Lots of people out there shot them indoor barebow, recurve, compound, youth, NASP, you name it. It's available. Right now it's the indoor round because it is indoor season. You don't have to shoot it inside. I will be submitting my scores here in my backyard in Florida. Luckily it's warm enough for me to go outside. And that's actually how you enter this giveaway. Every registration gets you one entry, and then every score you submit gets you another entry. The beautiful thing is you only have to pay once, only have to register once, and once you do that, you can shoot your recurve round, your trad round, your barebow round, your compound round. You can shoot all different rounds, and each one of those gets you one more entry into this giveaway. No purchase necessary. There is a free way to enter as well. I will have information down in the description below, as well as a card at the top up there, to the actual giveaway, as well as to the Backyard Championships. And one more quick thing while I'm at it, just housekeeping stuff. We have 2 camps coming up, or seminars per se, whichever you want to call them. One here is in Florida in February, and then one is in July in Europe, specifically in Austria. Spaces are limited, and if you're interested in shooting them, all the information's down in the description below. And unfortunately, in this video today, I'm not able to shoot currently. I injured my fingers mountain biking again. I got some stitches right now in my pinky finger on the knuckle. So I can't bend my fingers all the way, the ring and the pinky finger. So maybe next week I'll actually be able to actually shoot these arrows. What's different about this one compared to the regular X10 seems to be only that it is a parallel shaft and it is not tapered or barreled whatsoever. So the actual arrow itself is still an aluminum carbon arrow, which means that there is an aluminum core, and then it is wrapped in carbon. And so these cores are actually incredibly weak. It's amazing how soft these cores are. You can literally just squish them and crush them with your fingers. That's how soft this aluminum core is. But the way that they bond the carbon to the actual aluminum core lends itself to really, really high levels of consistency. So real quick, before we get too far into the weeds about discussing the actual arrow, I'll show it to you up close, and we'll talk about a few different of the features that I'm seeing here on the arrow. The labels look very similar to your standard X10. They have changed a little bit. They're a little bit more bold You got your warning, your typical warning label about safety stuff. The actual label's pretty standard. What's missing on this label is the actual spine of the arrow. You actually find the spine back here behind these initial boxes. Fun fact, most people don't know that those 3 white squares are so you can put your initials easily on the arrow with like a black Sharpie. And then behind that, right there, I'm gonna do my best to get it in frame for you. In this last portion, I have to do a stop frame and kind of show you it up close. There is what appears to be laser etching, I believe, on the surface of the arrow showing 500, which is the spine of the arrow. This is a 500 spine. C3, which we'll talk about, and then the actual serial number of the arrow. What I'm really, really happy to see is that this X10 Parallel Pro 3.2 whatever is the exact same quality without checking as a standard X10. I only say without checking because I haven't checked the actual straightness tolerance and spine tolerance, especially within the dozen of the arrows. But what I'm really, really happy to see is they still have the C code, C3. That's the weight code of the arrow. And this is what the beauty of the Easton brand does in regards to the high performance arrows, especially for outside, is that they make so many of them. And because they make so many of them, they can do such an incredible job with what's called sorting the arrows. So when you buy a 500 spine arrow from your average archery company, it has a range. I don't know what the official ranges are from each brand. I can only speak to some of the testing that I've done in the past, my X10s that I've tested in the past. When it says 500, it's plus or minus like 10, 490 to 510, somewhere in that range, so plus or minus 10. I've seen other carbon arrows, even if they are the premium arrow, the highest level that they offer, and they're, the straightest version, I'll see plus or minus 30 or more in my experience. When this says a 500, it's from 470 to 530. That's a huge range compared to what I find on the Easton arrows. Now the weight code, each individual arrow weight within this dozen is going to be super consistent, because what you end up seeing is there's like 3 things that are needed to be controlled: straightness, spine, spine tolerance, and weight tolerance. Those 3 things. So spine and spine tolerance are kind of one, weight tolerance is another, right? And so the weight tolerance is super, super important from arrow to arrow. And Easton, because they make so many, they have so many 500 spine arrows, they can sort through them, stack them together, and then they weight code them. So C3 means that I can buy a dozen of these arrows, shoot them for a year, break some, lose some, and you know what? I need some more arrows because I'm starting to run low. So I'm going to buy another 500 spine arrow and get a C3 weight code again. And what that means is these arrows and my new arrows are going to hit the same exact point. They're going to weigh the same. So there's a range from C0 to C6. It's like a bell-shaped curve essentially, where it goes from C3 is the most prevalent, right? So it's the highest amount in that bell-shaped curve. There's very few C0s and very few C6s, but it's still really important to pay attention to. And you don't want to mix and match those weight codes, because back at 70 meters, even 50 meters, you're going to see impact points on the target vertically when you have different weight arrows. If the weight codes are correct, if I remember correctly, C6 is heavier than C0. A C0 arrow, yes, it'll hit higher on the target, but it also dynamically acts stiffer than the heavier arrow. A heavier arrow overall acts dynamically weaker. It's double important, actually, as to the weight code, to make sure it impacts the same vertically, but also has the same tune, and therefore the same flight characteristics, also the same left and right impact because of that tune change. I'm very happy to see that they're still weight coded, and I expect that they'll have the same tolerance and same consistencies that you see on the full-blown X10 or the Protour. Also, because they are have serial numbers etched into them as well, they'll be able to trace back the actual batch and figure out if, say, something happens to this arrow and it starts falling apart, failing in ways that are unexpected. They'll be able to trace this number back to the batch. It's really, really beneficial in my opinion, and I don't see that happening with any other brand. And now, because these are parallel shafts, there is a lot more flexibility in what you, the shooter, or someone who is building the arrow can actually do. If you watch a lot of all carbon arrow shooters, when they're in their quiver, the labels are actually in various different positions on the shaft. Like, meaning they're sitting in the quiver, and all of a sudden, you know, you notice all of the labels are relatively in the same place, except for one of them, the label is sticking up much higher in the quiver, like that. Why is that one label in this position compared to all the rest are in the standard position, or, you know, in the same position? And when you're shooting a parallel shaft arrow, you're able to cut from the front or from the back of the arrow. And I can find the straightest portion of the arrow, the straightest, say 29 inches, because I'm going to cut these arrows at 29 inches. And what if the straightest section of 29 inches is actually towards the front on one arrow versus towards the back on others? Obviously, you want to put the straightest 29 inches. If you're going to cut 4 or 5 inches off this arrow, you're going to pick the straightest section of the arrow and cut that section and discard the rest. You might even cut a little off the back and most off the front, or vice versa. You'll see people who shoot parallel shaft arrows, all carbon arrows, especially outside skinny ones, the labels will be all over the place. Some will be forward, some will be back, some will be really consistent, and it's very confusing, or maybe people don't even notice that, but that's why it happens. When you typically are measuring arrow straightness, it's from 2 points, right, that sit on bearings, and then a dial indicator in the middle. And as they are spinning the arrow, they're checking for the straightness of the actual arrow itself. Now, take into consideration the difference between the front half and the back half of the arrow. The front half of the arrow is only touching the bow for a very short period of time, whether that's, if you're a finger shooter, on a rest or on a plunger, it only touches about this far. If you're shooting a drop away rest on a compound or even a lizard tongue, it's really not touching for that long on the shaft itself. Only about this much of the arrow is touching, say, the bow on average as it's coming out of the bow, whereas the nock end of the arrow is being controlled and pushed the entire way through the power stroke of the actual bow. So meaning it's far more critical to have the alignment or the straightness of the nock end of the arrow be as consistent as possible throughout the entire dozen arrows. And so because of that, I've seen people take their parallel, not these arrows, not parallel pros. I haven't seen that yet. They will turn one backwards, and you'll literally see one where the label is really far forward and all the rest are towards the back end as normal. That's because the front end of that arrow happened to be straighter than the back end of that arrow, so they flipped it around. And you can do those things with parallel arrows that you cannot do with a tapered shaft or a barreled shaft. You have the ability to be ultra precise and ultra consistent with how you build them. So this is a small little detail that most people won't even care about. Most people aesthetically want the labels to be all in the same place. And we will take a look at some of the other components. First, let's take a look at the stainless steel points. I ordered both stainless and tungsten just so I could show you them in the review. You have to pay attention with the tungsten points to the actual spine of the arrow compared to the outside diameter of the point. There's a guide that you can find that tells you, depending on what spine you're using, is which component you need to buy. There's various different sizes. Like on these tungsten ones, I have number 3s. You can see here it's labeled number 3, and that's because the number 3 works best with the 500 spine arrow. You got to pay attention to that because you want the outside diameter of the point to match the outside diameter of the shaft. So when it goes into the target, it doesn't catch carbon splinters and strip it off the arrow, or it doesn't make it hard to pull the arrow out of the target, or lending itself to more issues with the point sticking in the bail. So these stainless points are pretty similar to what I've seen in the past. I haven't seen stainless points for quite some time. So, you know, you got your standard segments here that you can break off in the back. But then there's a couple of glue kind of marks in the shaft here. There's 2 in the middle and then 3 more in the front that kind of let the glue sit inside of them, those actual little grooves. So that way it binds to the actual arrow a little bit better when you're gluing it in. The actual fit of these points going into this shaft is really, really nice. You know, there is some benefits and drawbacks to the stainless. Benefits are they're cheaper. Drawbacks are they bend. Also, they're longer. So you can actually use these stainless points as a bit of a tuning aid, and we'll talk a little bit more about that once I actually get to the shooting process. But the shank is way longer compared to the tungsten point, and I'll show you that here in a second. And so what this does is it actually stiffens up the arrow, so you can use this as a tuning aid. 100 grain stainless point will actually shoot stiffer compared to a 100 grain tungsten point. Looks like the tungsten points are made in Korea, and the shafts are made in the US. And just as I expected, the packaging is quite ridiculous in regards to the actual tungsten points. So the case is funny. There's a lot of money spent on this packaging, right? And so I kind of wish, in a way, it's like, just save your money, send it to me in a plastic bag like the stainless points, and make these things 20 bucks cheaper. Personally, I'd rather spend less money, because you're gonna take these points out, glue them into the arrows, and now you got an empty case that can't store you're not going to pull the tungstens out of your arrows and put them back in here. So just save the money, give me a cheaper price, and I'll be happier in the long run. I ordered the 100 grain points, so they're already broke off to 100 grains, and so it's just so funny to see such a little stubby shank. And like I said, I'll compare the stainless ones with you over the bench, and I'm happy to see a much larger chunk of hot melt. And just like stainless points, these tungsten points have grooves, as you can see there, towards the point end, where the glue will actually sit in and increase a little bit of bite into the shaft. The components fit excellent into the arrow. I'm very happy to see that. I got a little bit weaker arrow, so I can actually shoot them out of my recurve and my barebow, because supposedly you can go down a couple of spines, which tracks, because X10 compared to a parallel shaft arrow, you need to go about 50 spine weaker on the parallel shaft arrow to get the same tune, or the same tune at the same relative draw weight. So those that are coming from X10s on recurve or barebow to this style arrow here, just note that you may need to go down in spine or go to a weaker arrow. Down in spine, you know, Easton says 1 to 2 spines. I personally don't like that. I really wish Easton would say specifically how much spine. The X10's spine differences are a half a spine different in every other arrow. Most other arrows go by 100 spine changes, where the Easton X10 kind of goes every 50-ish. That's another separate issue. And yeah, let me get the camera repositioned over the bench, take a closer look at all of the different components, the fit and finish, and I'll show you the difference between a regular X10, these Parallel Pro X10s, as well as the difference in components for the old stuff versus the new stuff. So I've got my original X10 tungsten points over there, so we're going to take a look at these. These are, like I said, the 100 grain version, and then all of these I have broken off to be 100 grains. So they're old. You can see that they're, you know, a little bit, I don't know, have some sort of corrosion on them or something like that. I'm sure that tungsten does change a little bit over time, but you can definitely tell that the shank is shorter. The Easton one is on the bottom here, or the new one is on the bottom. The head looks to be the same overall length, but the outside diameter, it's a little more bulbous, I guess, so that's probably where they're pulling some of the material out of the actual shank and moving it out more towards the point. So dynamically, the tune is actually weaker with this point compared to the stainless point, like I said earlier, because of the length of the shank. You can see how you lose pretty much over 1 inch of actual flexing of the arrow with the stainless point. Yes, it makes the overall arrow length, the whole arrow length to the end of the point, longer, but the actual shaft length is still the same. Now, talking about tolerances, fit and finish here, we'll look at the stainless steel point first. And the way that it fits into the shaft is really, really nice. It's quite snug to begin with, and then it gets a little bit easier through the middle section, probably because I'm assuming that they're really making sure that the ends of where the actual shank would be is proper diameter, really, really tight tolerance, and the inside diameter here, and then really, really tight at the front. But it's leaving a little bit of space in the middle. That's why it's so easy through this section for glue to kind of sit there and have more of a film of the glue on the shank, so it adheres better and makes it stick better. Because as I get towards this end, it starts to tighten up dramatically this last little bit before it slips in place. Having tighter OD tolerances here at the two ends really allows the point itself to be perfectly aligned to the shaft. And the same thing happens here. You can even see it in the point itself. Sorry about my wounds, but you can see it's full diameter through this section. It's quite fat. Then you can see a line here where it then necks down a little bit through the little grooves, and then it steps back up towards the end right before the actual point. And so it's definitely tight in that back spot. There's very, lots of looseness in the middle, again, for the actual glue, and then it's tight in that last little section till it slips in place fully. Before I cut these and build them, let's talk about why you may like this arrow better than a regular X10. Being able to be very selective of how you build them. I'm going to build them like this or backwards because I want to actually have the straightest portion of the arrow on the nock end, as we've already discussed. That's one massive benefit of this arrow. Another massive benefit is that it is parallel. Because it is parallel, it's very easy to set your center shot. Because it's easy to set your center shot, you don't have to worry about where your plunger is, where your lizard tongue, your rest, any of that stuff is when it's at brace height compared to when it's at full draw. We set our center shot outside of center with the barrel shaft arrows and slightly above where we would like it to be at brace height, because at full draw, the end of the shaft down here where it sits when we're at full draw is much thinner than where it is here or in this type of area when it's sitting at brace height, because on a standard X10 it's fatter in this section than it is towards the ends. And so you have to, kind of pre-set up your bow to be imperfect when at brace height, but perfect at full draw. So that way, the arrow gets pushed straight. The nodes are aligned correctly. And so what this does is it makes things much easier to tune because you're using the same outside diameter, the entire length of the arrow. So it's much less tricky in regards to tuning. So it's going to tune easier. But also for barebow, string walking, if we're pulling back the string with a point on, a nock, touching, right, no crawl, you're pulling the bow back much further, or the arrow back much further, more importantly. But when you string walk down the string, right, the string has an angle when it comes off of your fingers, and so you're drawing this arrow back shorter on a deep crawl, and because of that, again, the diameter, it's changing. So therefore, the trajectory angle, the launch angle of the arrow off the bow will be slightly different on barebow with your different crawls. Same thing with compound. This will tune much easier because there is no taper. You don't have to deal with knocking point issues. The recurve, like I said, this Parallel Pro, because of the center shot, it's just going to be easier to tune overall. So with all that being said, that's why I'm thinking this is going to be a highly popular arrow. You have the brand Easton to back it, so the warranty is going to be there. You can actually talk with somebody in customer service. They're going to be way more likely to communicate with you compared to some of the other brands out there that are offering anything in this kind of diameter. Plus, you have the insane selection of these arrows because they make so many of them. So you have, again, that C series, that weight code. You don't find that in any other brand. The durability of these arrows, I'm assuming, is going to be just like the regular X10. It's just parallel. There's not a huge change here, and I'm glad I got a set so I can test them with my recurve and my barebow, and I want to buy a set for my compound for outside as well. I just think it's going to be a killer arrow. So I'm going to start assembling the components. I am going to get the pins glued in first before I get to cutting the arrows and then getting the points glued in. I didn't go with the collars in the back. Shooting recurve, even if you smash into the nock, it's really rare that it ever damages the shaft. Not going to be using those because I don't like the added weight in the back of the shaft, personally speaking. And I'm just quenching them here in some cold water, just so that way I can peel off the hot melt much faster when I'm ready to do so. Otherwise it stays sticky for too long. If you're interested in learning how I glue my points and nocks and all that stuff in place, or my pins rather, I will have links down in the description below for a video I've already created on how to properly install components. Really important details to pay attention to at this stage. So I'll have links down in the description below and a card at the top up there. So I'm just going to build these ones up standard for my recurve and barebow and for the initial tests before I get into the crazy method of really getting super picky on how I build these things and, checking for that straightness that I talked about. I will do that though for the compound set, or for the set that I will be building for my compound. So I'll do a standalone video on how to build arrows like to an extreme level of accuracy and consistency. There is one thing that I wish actually came with these. It's a small detail, but a sticker. These are the stickers that used to come with the X10s. I've got a handful of them, but they're nice when they come with that. You stick them on your case, your mug, coffee cup, whatever. It's just a nice little detail. For the price, a sticker would be nice. So if you just saw what I did, you take these little donuts, the pieces of the excess pieces of hot melt that are on the actual shaft. You push it that way. Never, ever, ever push it that way. If you do, you can hook a layer of carbon. You can literally strip an entire length of carbon off the arrow. So you just push it away from the shaft. It's so easy once it's chilled or cooled, like in a cup of water, to just press these straight off, and it flies off with a lot of ease. No surprises. I didn't expect there to be any sort of trickiness to this at all. As you can see, it's a good place to use your Easton stickers. Now, my notes on here says my recurves X10s were 29 and a hair on the raw shaft. But I already glued the pins in, and I've got a standard X10 here, and I guess we can compare the difference between the two, and I'll definitely compare the weight of them once I'm done building them. But here's a regular X10 that I've already got set that I shoot regularly, and so with the pin on it, because it adds a little bit of length, I have to adjust the fence on my saw here. All right, I'm gonna wear my dust mask instead of hooking it up to the shop vac. It's a little bit easier at this point. Real important to wear a dust mask because of those carbon particulates. Don't want to inhale them, get them in your lungs. Last step before gluing in the points is to deburr the front of the shafts. I'll show you why here in a second. First, you want to make sure all that junk comes out of the shaft. You can see the ends are all like chewed up basically, right? So you just take a countersink bit. You can use a Phillips head screwdriver as well. I've used that in the pinch, but these are much better because it'll actually cut the little bits out. And I'm just giving a little bit of pressure and spinning it. Let me knock out the... And so there's all sorts of extra stuff. And you can see the ones that I have deburred and the ones that I haven't. It'll make installation of the points much easier. Plus, you won't be pushing these little shavings inside the shaft, which may or may not stick to the actual hot melt. And so because of that, you might have free-floating shavings inside the shaft. And it looks like they're all nice and clean, and the points go in really well. Now, I do like the feature of the point, how it's a little thicker as the entryway and a little thicker down to the end. I think it's going to lend itself to a little bit better alignment. However, it is a little trickier to get the first bit of the actual shank of the point to be inserted into the arrow shaft. It's just a little tricky. It's definitely a little harder, and if you're not, comfortable with this, or your process of heating up the hot melt and getting it on the shank and getting into position ready to go isn't all dialed in, it can make this assembly a little bit trickier because the glue can actually cool down before you actually get the end of the shank into the components, or the end of the component into the inside of the shaft. So it's a little trickier. I would say it's absolutely worth it because it should make the alignment of the component a lot more precise and accurate. I've done a lot of testing over my years, and the 100 grain point for recurve just flat out outshoots 120 grain every single time I've tested it. So the same thing goes here. Quick dry it off. Just take the hot melt and push it towards the point, and it should pop right off. Now you'll notice that as I dried them, or cooled them down rather, they were sitting down where the entire shaft of the arrow is pushing weight onto the point. And what this is doing is making sure that as the air inside the arrow heats up from the hot point or the hot pin, it doesn't build pressure enough to push the point or the pin out of the arrow slightly. It's super common to have a tiny space between the actual component and the shaft. I always give a visual look just to check. Everything looks great. Now comparison side by side compared to a regular X10. It is now the exact same length. I have a 410 X10 here. I also have 450s, and this is a 500. Here's a 450. I want to quick grab my caliper and just measure a couple sections on the arrow just to see what the actual difference in size is. I'm going to do this in thousandths of an inch. So the 410 right at the end of the point, or the shank of the arrow by the point, is 185 thousandths of an inch is the 410, 185. The 450 is 185. The Parallel Pro, I'm going to assume they're all the same by the point. We're going to find out, or near that. 199. So we're slightly bigger at the point end. Let's go to the nock end. This is 410, 176, 177. The 450, 177. And the Parallel Pro should be 199, right? Yep, 199. We're going to go right on the label, 410, right in the middle of the label. 212, 450, 208. Well, I mean, it should all be the same, right? Because there's a parallel, 199. So, Parallel Pro is in fact parallel. It is slightly larger OD at the ends compared to a regular X10, but a regular X10 is definitely dramatically fatter in the middle. 450 bare shaft with no pin in it, or excuse me, no nock in it, but it does have the pin. Just quick weigh the actual arrow here. A regular X10, 345 grains, 342 grains. So basically the same weight as a 450. So a 500 and a 450 are roughly the same. So it should be about the same too shooting wise. So all that's left now is I'm going to fletch these up. I'm going to use some Wave Pro vanes. It's a vane that we have currently available on jkaminsky.com. I'm going to use the bright green version on this. I'm going to fletch 9 of them up fletched and leave 3 bare shafts so I can bare shaft tune with 3 bare shafts properly. These vanes, in case you haven't heard about them, it's specifically designed for recurve shooters, or single string bow shooters rather. Recurve, barebow, traditional, all that stuff. It's very, very lightweight, extremely thin. Basically, they are regular vanes, like a standard vane, but they're extremely, extremely thin and lightweight. So they kind of are a hybrid between your spin wing type vane and your standard glue-on vane. So it's a little bit higher profile than the standard Wave, which gives you almost twice the surface area, works much better at lower draw weights, closer distances, and shorter draw lengths as well. And actually I find it to be more forgiving than the regular Wave. You catch a little bit more wind drift because it's a little bit bigger, but it's really not that big of a deal or that much compared to even just a regular spin wing type vane. These drift almost the same. It's just a little bit better performing, a little bit less weight in the back end of the arrow. That's why I don't use the impact collar as well. So that way I get my maximum forgiveness off my fingers when I make mistakes. For compound, these are not quite durable enough. They'll probably shoot really well, but they're not going to last long. You're going to tear them up because you shoot such tight groups at 50 meters compared to us recurvers at 70 meters. Use my VaneMaster Pro, fletch them up with approximately 8 degrees of helical, and then I will come back at the end and give you an overall first impression thoughts here on this X10 Parallel Pro 3.2 millimeter. Remember, there are chapters down the bottom, so you can jump around as you need. I'm going to use left helical. You don't have to use the pins that they give you. You can actually take it past that if you want and get more helical out of it. That's how I end up getting 8 helical, even though this jig is only designed to go to 5. Quick shot of some CA glue accelerator. Really speeds up this process. Got to do it in a well ventilated area though. All right, one done. Lots of helical, which is going to help spin that arrow a tremendous amount. Very hard to show you at this angle, but you can get an idea there about how much this thing is going to spin. All right, I got my arrows all fletched up and built now, and they do look really, really nice. The labels are way bigger than I'm used to on a standard X10, and they're spinning excellently straight. I wouldn't expect anything different. I didn't put them on my ram spine checker and check the straightness and all that stuff yet. I will be doing that stuff in a later video, especially when I go to build my compound arrows. I will really put those through the ringer, check the straightness, check the weight, check the tolerances. So other than them not coming with a sticker, I have literally no complaints about this. I think that this is going to be one of those really, really successful arrows. It's probably going to be a little bit run under the radar as far as how good this arrow is, I think, because it's not game-changing in that it's nothing crazy new. It's just taking the technology of the X10 and making it a parallel shaft arrow. It's like a super upgraded, ultra premium ACC, like an old ACC, but it's an X10 size, the outside diameter, which is going to be phenomenal for long range outdoor shooting, 50 meters, 70 meters, or full FITAs. I think it's going to be really good for all styles of archery. This is going to be a killer compound arrow, easy to tune, easy to set up. Killer barebow arrow, easy to tune, easy to set up. Good on crawls, meaning it doesn't change your left and right nearly as much as the regular X10. Also, same thing for recurve, easy to tune and easy to set up. Maybe not as forgiving, not as high of performance for a recurve shooter or for a barebow shooter. Maybe not the barebow shooter, but definitely if you're shooting single distance barebow shooters, I think the regular X10 still may be higher performing. But there's a price, there's a cost there, and there's some things you got to do. Is you got to really pay attention to how you're building the arrows, the X10s, and make sure that you don't cut them off the back, you're only cutting them off the front. The aluminum carbon arrow with that aluminum core, even though it's super weak as I described earlier in the video, it's just far superior because, first and foremost, like I said, the Easton brand, they make so many arrows. They produce so many arrows. And so they can be very picky as to which ones are successful, which ones are garbage, which ones are in the right C codes, C0 through C6. These are C3s. Other brands don't do that because they don't make enough arrows. If you made a lot of arrows, you'd be able to sort them to the level and have the consistency in each batch be matching this X10, but there's just nothing out there that compares, and in my opinion it is actually superior to a standard all carbon arrow, because you've got to have straightness tolerance, spine tolerance, and weight tolerance. Those three things are really hard to come by in an all carbon arrow. You'll get 2 of 3, and to get the third of 3 you just have to buy dozens upon dozens upon dozens and group them all together and sort them yourself, because the company doesn't do it for you. Again, this is unbiased, truly unbiased feedback that I'm giving you. I'm not sponsored by anyone. Proudly, I keep it that way specifically on this channel so I can give you unbiased feedback when it comes to archery equipment, because if I was sponsored, I'd be a mouthpiece for that company, right? Every single sponsored shooter out there, even though they say, well, this is the best stuff, they're paid to say that. And I don't want that to happen on this channel. So the way I support this channel is by you all watching it, heading to my website, jkaminski.com. Actually, you can enter to win these dozen, not this dozen, but a dozen X10 Parallel Pro 3.2 millimeter arrows that are brand new, your choice of spine, as well as tungsten points, whether that be the 100 grain, 120, or even the break off. And the way you enter into the giveaway is you participate in the Backyard Archery Championships. We just started it back up. You get 1 entry if you sign up, another entry when you submit scores, and you can submit a handful of scores for a bunch of different disciplines: compound, recurve, barebow, traditional, even a kids round. And every time you submit a score, you get an extra entry. There is a free no entry giveaway option as well. Full links down in the description below, or you can head to my website, jkaminski.com, and check out the events page, where you can also sign up for our camps in Austria and all that other stuff. So that's how I help support the channel, how I afford to buy this gear. There's also links down in the description below for affiliate links through various different things, all the gear that you saw me use in today's video, and that allows me to produce this content for free and give you that unbiased feedback. I'm not even selling you this gear. I'm not making money off the gear, because you can click that link and buy different arrows at Lancaster. It doesn't matter. Now, I really wish I could be shooting these things. Again, like I said, I hurt my finger. I got some stitches, and I can't bend them because they're right on the knuckles. The rest of the fingers are fine. I just can't bend them enough to actually shoot these yet. So that's going to hopefully come next week, depending on how things are healing up. And that way I can get you some feedback on how these things actually shoot. And I'm super excited to get a set built for my compound as well, because I think they're going to be phenomenal outside. And also, if you got value out of this video, if you wouldn't mind, hit the subscription button and the notification bell. Consider sharing this video too. Genuinely, it really helps this channel grow. Consider sharing it in your Discord groups or chat groups or whatever you may be involved in. It just helps spread the word about the channel. And there's a lot of people out there that might be interested in grabbing these Easton X10 Parallel Pro 3.2 millimeter arrows that are new for this year. Can't wait to shoot these things and give you some feedback on how they actually perform. Hopefully they shoot halfway as decent as they look. I think it's going to be one phenomenal arrow.